There are actually key differences between amateur, pro, and master logo designs. But do you know what divides these three skill tiers? Let's first look at the use of typography and logotype. So here's a logo, and when you're thinking about logotype specifically, i.e. the typography on the logo, what do you think when you look at this design and the layout? Is it decent? Do you think it works well? What would you potentially change on the logo? Well, the typography use here would actually be considered amateur level, and here's exactly why. The amateur logo designer will often use a very generic font that simply does not fit the logo at all, or at best, fonts they like to use the most. And as a drastic example here, we have Papyrus as the choice of logo type. The amateur logo designer doesn't understand typeface psychology, and they do not match the font to the target audience and the brief, which is a critical error. They also often will use automatic tracking set to auto, and if they do adjust anything, they will just use the settings here with no manual kerning whatsoever. The pro designer, however, will manually kern the logo type, and quite rightly so. If that means by outlining the type and moving the characters around manually, or come between each character and use the keyboard shortcut to nudge the lettering, they will understand the importance of manual kerning on a logo. They will also understand typeface psychology to some extent, and they will make good attempts at matching the style of the typeface with the brief. So on this example here we have Montserrat, and that's great because it's a modern and a robust sans serif, seemingly fitting the logo's brief and the audience. But what about that master level logo designer when it comes to logo type? The master designer will often either create the logo type from scratch as a bespoke design, or make alterations so the logo type is customized. Not always, but it is often a go-to method. Importantly though, they find a perfect balance between the symbol and the logo type, and the two are perfectly matched for the psychology of the target audience. So that's the rundown of AM, Pro, and Master when thinking about logo type. Let's now swing into the sector of color. Color can be tricky, and it's one of the main reasons why amateur logo designers do come stuck and trip up in their projects. Amateur logo designers will often use colors they think are cool, and that's without considering the brief or color psychology at all. One thing you might notice of an amateur logo is how the typography itself is often presented in color rather than grayscale or black. This in of itself isn't a sin, and it will have a time and a place. But the amateur will often always slap color onto their logo type without any thought. Something else you can expect to see from an amateur logo design is the overuse of color, and that's where the designer feels compelled to use multiple colors on every single design. And again, it's without much thought or design thinking involved. Something else that isn't really a sin is using gradients on a logo. And this third logo design looks fairly decent, right? But the amateur designer can sometimes rely on gradients for the logos to quote-unquote work. A logo should work well without a gradient, and it shouldn't rely on it to function as a brand mark. The pro designer will understand color theory somewhat, and how the logo's color should relate to the brief and to the audience. However, they may play it safe. And so here, this logo is for an insurance company and it's using grayscale, and that might be considered a safe bet here. But it might not speak to the audience and the brief fully, which is a problem. And like I mentioned, understanding color theory at the pro level is important, and so a calming blue could represent trust and reliance for an insurance company. And that's not wrong at all, but things can be taken further in the master level. So the master logo designer will be able to experiment with color in relation to the brief and the target audience. They know when to stray away from conventions and how to do it properly. So if we reconsider this is an insurance company, red might seem to evoke a sense of danger, and you think that is a bad choice for an insurance company, right? But this isn't a bright blood red. It's somewhat desaturated and a kind of a soft red. But how can this red even be a good choice for an insurance company? Well, this red is warming, which could be welcoming and reassuring to some people, but more so and more importantly, it stands out and evokes a sense of strength and boldness. If the brand's target audience are those who consider themselves to be radical and elite, This palette might appeal to those people a lot more than the safe blue we saw earlier, and the master logo designer will be able to pick up on stuff like this, whereas the two tiers below likely wouldn't. And now we're going to look at the third section of amateur, pro, and master logo design. Scalability is one of the most important aspects to a logo design, and yet so many people seemingly overlook it. The amateur designer will often add way too much detail on their logos, which not only looks, well, amateurish, it means that the logo becomes way too messy and unrecognizable at smaller scales. The design will often have minor, small details that can easily just be taken away for it to function at a better standard. The professional designer understands that a logo needs to be simple to be memorable and effective, and that it also needs to function at smaller scales, such as on letterheads or business cards and so on. This often means the logo is simpler and just looks more professional as an end result. But the master logo designer understands all of what the professional one does, but they also will include things like favicons and other layouts for the logo. And this is so the client can use the logo in different situations and different platforms. This is what separates the two here, and it means that the logo can be used in any situation and can still relate back to the brand in an effective manner. And if you'd like to continue your journey at becoming a master logo designer, just click that video on screen. But until next time guys, design your future today. Peace.